Okay. Hello. Hi, Eugene. Okay,
Hello.
okay. Hello. Hi. So, for people who are tuning in, maybe nobody's watching yet, but I hope people will come in a while. Even if you don't, maybe you'll see our faces later on the stream. But this is part of a startup conversation series that I'm starting. So every 2 weeks, we will start by having conversations with founders. This is not a business podcast, not really to talk about your business or like what you do, but more to go deeper into conversations about like who these founders are, what makes them tick, and what challenges them every day. So today we have Eugene here. Eugene Cheng is the partner and creative lead at HighSpark. HighSpark is a strategic presentation agency that offers presentation training and strategy services to Fortune 500 companies. So some companies that they serve include like MasterCard, Prudential, Oracle, and they also do fundraising for various startups. So in 2017, he also launched a video production company called video messaging company. And Eugene is also one of the 20 Singaporeans who are Forbes 30 under 30 honoraries in 2020. So hello, Eugene. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. Can you hear me?
Yes, go for it.
Okay, great. So Eugene, you have started a business for 7 years, right? You've
Yes,
been
it's
running.
been a long time.
So from the 7 years, like then and now, how has things changed along the way for you?
For me personally or for the business?
For you personally, as a founder, running the business, doing things, from scratch where you were like working off cafeteria tables, finding
Ah,
plugs to now like servicing such big clients and
oh gosh,
running a big team, right? How,
nostalgia.
how has
Yes,
things changed? Yeah.
sure. I think when we first got into it, my partner Kaising and I, specifically for HighSpark, it was quite a nerve-wracking experience. I mean, these are two poly children, 20 years old, 19 years old, and we haven't had any real experience outside of school. And here we are trying to start a business, trying to speak to people who are sometimes double or triple our age, and to get them to pay us quite a decent amount of money to do something that they would have never believed that we would be able to do. So that was one of the key challenges that we were facing in the initial stages. Like we would meet someone who is quite senior in an organization, much older, and they would basically ask like, hey, you're about the same age as my son. So how can I trust you to do these things for me? And it was quite a difficult hurdle to get past. So a couple of things that we did
So
as a yeah, go ahead.
every 2 weeks. Yeah. Sorry.
Oh,
Continue. My
no,
my
no
audio
worries.
from my phone. Sorry.
It's all right. Yeah. So what I was saying, yes, I think it was quite difficult to get past at the beginning. One of the things that we did was to dress a bit older. I wear a jacket, wear a pair of glasses that has no degree. We had to do things like that just to get our foot in the door. How things have changed so dramatically now is, I think, one, we don't look as young as we do anymore, although some people still say so. When we meet people now, I think you tend to have that level of confidence that you didn't have when we first started, and people can sense it, just in the way
Right.
that you speak, just in the way that you walk, just in the way that you talk, and that basically helps us, I think, get much quicker to where we need to be. The second thing I think is, in the beginning, it was just us, Kaising and myself, like you say, mucking around at different cafeteria tables in school, and different places like in coffee shops and all that, just to get
So
work
let
done.
me stop you here,
Let's go for
Eugene.
it.
For anybody who is watching right now, I think there's like a couple of people watching, right? Can you say hello if you know Eugene or you know myself? Say hi to us so that we know that we are not alone and there are people watching our stream. And then if you have questions from Eugene, please go ahead and ask him. So he was talking about how it's been different, right? Yeah. And like what have been your biggest lessons over the past 7 years since like things have changed quite a bit.
Biggest lessons, like I said, I think first thing is you need to put yourself in a situation where you aren't alone, because it can be very scary to start something new on your own, especially when you're really young. In that vein, or in that same thought, uh, it's nothing wrong with asking for help, right? A lot of the times where we were unsure, about what we needed to do, we always had the opportunity to ask someone. I have this habit. I like to go to Facebook and LinkedIn, and I like to randomly message people. And when I do,
Asking for
you always
help.
be you yeah, I'm always quite surprised by who replies to me and kind of helps me out. Especially if you're younger, I think people just kind of look at you and think that you're a bit weak. And because of that, they kind of want to help you out. Or you kind of look like you're a bit humble, and you have a lot of difficulties in your life. And people are just generally quite altruistic in that way. So I think asking for help is something that
And
that
generally, people like to give advice, right?
yeah, they do. I mean, sometimes they think that they know it all, which helps because sometimes you don't, and it helps that they can give you some feedback from their wisdom from their experiences that will help you to make better decisions and avoid certain mistakes. I think another lesson is uh, I, I I feel like you need to be very adaptable because how business is today will not be how business is moving forward into the future. I feel like that's like a cliche statement that everyone will say, but
Mhm.
I think COVID really exacerbated that and gave people an impression of just how quickly things can change. I mean, you look into industries like blockchain, even in some technology-based industries, those have just accelerated so quickly. And even for us during COVID, suddenly the well ran dry. We weren't seeing any inquiries coming in. We were seeing that clients were having trouble finding budgets to spend on our services, and the
Mm.
needs became very, very different. And I think uh, if we weren't quick to act, or at least had the right mindset, and you kind of just roll over like that, you tend to lose out, because when it does come back, or when things do kind of settle in that new normal and you're not ready, you'll find yourself in a very tough spot. So I think it's a hard muscle to train, because it's hard to say, oh yeah, go and be adaptable and kind of be ready to deal with all these difficulties, right? It's more of have a sense of what kind of business you're running, who you're serving, and subsequently, if let's say you can't help this particular group of people in the same way that you used to do, is there any other way to do that in a different way, right? And I think that's one of the things that really helped us stay afloat, that helped us to have the mindset that you don't have to just roll over and give up. You can get quite creative with the way that you frame your offerings, with the way that you decide to help people. And again, if you come from the mindset of helping and delivering value, it's very, very hard to not at least still have a sustainable business, unless you're running like a food business and you kind of really have to close down. That's really tough, right? I think the medium
Mm.
of things are going to evolve so quickly, especially with rise of like metaverses and these kind of investment teams. But we have to be ready and we have to be open so that we're always ahead. The moment that you start deciding that everything's fine, you get a bit complacent and you decide not to evolve, that's the time where I think anything that could happen, any black swan events, could really trip you over and ruin what you've built or spent so many years building. Yeah.
Okay, Faye says hi to you.
Oh, hi.
Uh,
I mean, I can't see it, but
oh
I'm
yeah, yeah.
happy that.
Faye says hi. Hello, Faye. Okay,
Okay.
so I think you mentioned earlier, right? Like being adaptable, and like knowing like there are people that you can't serve. Were there moments that you experienced it? And can you share like a specific experience that you had for yourself, right?
Sorry, can you repeat the question, the last line? I missed that.
Were there moments where you experienced like a great adversity that you had to adapt to?
Adversity.
Mm,
I think people's definitions of adversity is quite different, right? I feel, to be frank, I mean, Kaising and I have been quite blessed that we haven't had the prospect of like going bankrupt tomorrow kind of thing, like almost running out of cash. I think we've always been quite conservative in the way we run our business. And I think specifically for the video company though, I mean, again, not HighSpark by Motion Source, we did come quite
yeah.
close to that, because
Wow.
when you have a business that is very overhead heavy, right? You have a lot of cost, margins are really thin, and it's very competitive. Any kind of these small events where it trips you up, you really can be in a very dire situation if you don't manage your cash flow, right? So like, let's say adversity wise, maybe we almost ran out of cash for a period of time during 2020. Like,
Mm,
the business wasn't
mm,
coming in. A lot of the clients that were supposed to pay either couldn't pay or they ran out of cash. So keeping a very healthy cash balance, as well as ensuring that you always have your pipeline full, especially from an agency business kind of perspective, is super important. If you don't have a strategy to do that, it's something that kind of just, it's like a rock, you can't,
right.
or can, right? They call it kicking the can down the road. It's
Yeah.
there, that it's eventually going to happen and strike you, but you choose just to ignore it because well, it's not something to worry about right now. It's sort of like,
Mm.
I hate to say it, but some people have an illness, and or they have bad habit that might lead to an illness, but they just decide to keep doing it because so far nothing bad has happened, right? So I think
Okay. I
yeah,
think I think we have more people who joined us. Say hi if you have just joined us. And if you know Eugene, say hi as well. You can ask any questions. And then I will help you to ask him these questions. The more difficult, the better, right?
oh, okay.
Yeah. You talked about cash flow, Eugene, and like running kind of low. How was it like? How low did it go exactly? Hi,
Oh wow.
Joseph. Our
I
friend
think
Joseph says
it's,
hi.
yeah, I think it's just, it went to the point where you're not sure whether you could make payroll next month for your staff members, and you just have to be prepared that as a owner, you probably have to take a hit on that, right? Because, like I said, it depends on the mindset. We've seen some business owners, and we've seen it all over social media, where the first thing that they do
Yeah.
is they stop paying their staff first, right?
Yeah.
Our mindset is, of course, owners will always take a hit, business will always take a hit, but we have to keep it going, at least for the team members,
Right.
and make sure that cash flow works right. So I mean, definitely the measures put in by the government, you can take like quick loans at very low interest rates. That was
But
very
what
very
about
useful.
for motion source? How did that?
Yeah,
How
so
did
it's
you
more it's
guys?
more it's so specifically for that. In the end, what happened was we took a bridging loan for a period of time. I mean, we're
Yeah.
long past that. I mean, it's been almost a year or so since past that, right?
Right.
So it was something that we were very uncomfortable with, to be frank,
Right.
because you're thinking, oh no, financing debt is always something that's very scary to most people, but it can be a very powerful accelerator, because in businesses where you don't always get your cash flow so quick. I'll give you an example: construction, right? They get a huge project size, but the
Mhm.
payments don't always come in because they have to service the payments first on their own to buy the raw equipment and to do all those things, right? So by the time the payment comes in, sometimes they run out of cash. So having a facility or having some good level of basic projection skill is going to be very useful and important for businesses. And I think, unfortunately, because most business owners, when they come in and they don't have an experience in finance or anything like that, it's not something that they intuitively do. And then they find like, wow, I'm running out of money all of a sudden, and it's sort of like it creeps up on them in that way. So
Right.
what we do, or try to stay ahead of that, is we tend to do a bit of projections ahead, just more of, okay, look, very simple. Let's say you have a monthly burn, meaning you pay your staff and everything, it costs you maybe like $20,000 a month. So simple math, 6 months down the road, if you run out of business for 6 months for some reason, which is very unlikely,
Mhm.
but let's say 6 months,
Mhm.
you just have to
Mhm.
multiply by 6, you get about $120,000 in terms of burn, right? So do you have enough for that? And if you don't,
Mhm.
is that something you need to be concerned with? Are you going to get any payment? It's quite straightforward to really look at
Yeah.
it. If you just look at it in like, oh yeah, how much am I going to get paid tomorrow, or like a month from now? How
Right.
much do I need to pay out? Then you sort of see cash flow wise where it is. I know not everyone's accounting trained, and that's fine. But just write it on a piece of paper, just so that you know whether you have enough. Again, if you don't survive, then how will you thrive, right? So I think it's okay to want to thrive, but you just have to make sure that you have your baseline covered first. Yeah.
I think most maybe it's Asian context. I'm not sure. Like,
Mm.
but people are like very afraid of loans. I don't know. Is that a common thing?
No, for sure, 100%. I think, depending on your upbringing, for my upbringing, my parents had basically demonized credit cards and loans and everything. But when you grow up and you realize and you study a little bit about it, you realize that financing is and leverage is not necessarily an evil thing if you know what you're doing and you pay your loans on time. For example, if you want to take a loan for the business or even for yourself, if you don't have any credit history, no one's going to lend you anything, right? So you need
Hmm.
to at least preserve that and leverage different schemes that are available in the market. For example, financing. There's ways to get out of this situation where you don't have cash flow. For example, invoice financing, right? There are many firms that offer a pretty decent rate. Basically, they buy over your invoices and they will give you, of course, a bit lesser, so they have to make a bit, they'll make a bit
Hmm.
once they collect on your invoice later down the road. So again,
Hmm.
these schemes and financial instruments were not available before. You probably only could take loans, and people were really scared of it because taking debt is something that's very scary to, like I say, Asian
Hmm.
people. Maybe because our parents or our forefathers' generation, they used to fall into deep debt from credit card debt or taking on a lot more liability than they could. But I don't think it's something we need to be afraid of. It's just something that we need to have a plan for. If you're taking the
Hmm.
loan, think about, how are you going to leverage the money? Because if you're taking a loan and the money is just going to sit there for cash flow purposes, that's okay. But if it's just going to sit there for no reason, you basically taking a loan for nothing and you're paying the fees for nothing. The bank makes money, they're really happy, but you're not
Yeah.
leveraging it to the best outcome.
So Eugene, but like, what about for yourself? Right. I mean, you've talked about for the
Sure.
business, finances wise, having to make
Mm.
sure that there's cash flow. That is a really big issue that like a lot of business owners will be thinking about. What about yourself personally, right? What has been a big challenge for you
Okay, so for myself personally, well, I mean, over the years or just recently?
over the years? Maybe what has been the biggest moment where you're like, oh shit, why am I doing what I do?
No expertise on the podcast, I see. Okay, can. I think that there was a time where, there was a client, and then the client will come and say like, oh yeah, we're really unhappy with all these things. We want to sue you unless you refund us the money and things like that. But of course, we were really young, so we also don't know, right? So you
You've
you
been
just kind of.
threatened to be like you got like
Yeah, I
threats.
mean, people get that. I think
Right.
eventually when you've been in business long enough, you will get people who don't really like you and they want to do
Wow.
something like that. Nothing you really can do to stop them, but you can't stop the threats. But you
Mm.
can control how you uh decide to say yes or no to these things, or
How you
adapt to these things.
respond, how you
Yeah, we've
negotiate.
also had like clients who became really disappointed sometimes with certain outputs, but it's not really our fault. It's just that they weren't communicating properly. So I think, again, depending on what's the situation, most businesses I think will come to a point where even if they've been doing everything right, they will come to a point where they maybe have a PR mishap. Maybe a client isn't really happy with them and they want some form of a remedy, and how to deal with that situation sometimes escapes most people. And we see, in fact, and I've seen myself with friends who run a really tight ship and do add a lot of value to people. All they have to do is go on a weird public channel, like it could be a Telegram group, a WhatsApp group, and they just have to say something pretty nasty or like not be able to respond in the right way, and immediately they are demonized for it. And people are throwing tomatoes at them, virtual tomatoes or something, and they don't really know how to get out of that, which is why you need to talk to a PR consultant like Crystal, so you can handle that. No, honestly, it's so important. It's so
Plug.
important because for some reason, when it comes to things relating to the business that is their own, right? And things that sometimes people make personal attacks, and people can be quite nasty, right? You take
Yeah.
it really personally and you act on impulse. And once you do that, immediately you will likely make the wrong move. And
Right.
unfortunately, because everything now online is recorded, very quickly people are able to keep that, and it will always exist. And people will always think that you are a nasty person and you've done this thing that's so bad, and you basically ruined all these years of the things that you built in that one moment, right? So I think I wouldn't call it like the most difficult adversity that I faced, but we've gone through moments like that
Mm.
really, it's never really the business problems that kind of put you in a fumble of state.
It's
It's
always the
always the
people.
people problems, right? Because people are more difficult to handle. They're
Yeah.
emotional, and it's not like answer A equals answer B. It's never binary. And I think
Mm.
hiring people, letting people go. Again, I think these are normal things to do in the business, but I still haven't gotten used to letting people go. I think it's one of the worst feelings ever. And I think anyone who runs a business actually knows that. There's no good way to do it, but I don't think it has to be a bad way when you do it. Lah. Yeah. So I think that's just
Mm.
more my view
What was
in
the
terms of.
worst experience for you when it was like letting someone go?
Oh, okay. I mean, when we let people go, it's usually because it's not fit, and it's not because we don't like them. I mean, most of the time we would have screened someone enough that we know that they are nice people, lah, right? I think the worst is when you get someone and then they're very emotional and they start crying and all that in front of you, and it's not a great feeling because you know that maybe they really like working here, and they had an attachment to the work, and they like the culture and the organization, and they are worried that they have to go somewhere else that they are unsure of, and they may not adapt well there, and they like their friends that are here. uh and it's just a nasty thing to do. I mean, it has to be done, but it's something that still doesn't feel that great to do, especially when someone's really emotional about it. So I think in those situations doesn't feel so great lah. Yeah.
Right. Okay, got it. So like, but I think the worst experience you say is like people crying or breaking down in front of you.
Yeah, I think that's one of the worst in terms of having when you have to do that, and that sort of happens lah. Of course, you can't escape it, and something you still do, but I would
Mm.
rather avoid it if you can. Yeah.
Yeah. So it seems that for you, like people skills or like negotiation is like one of the biggest things you gain.
Oh yes. 100%. I think it's so underrated, right? And I'm not saying this just because we run a communications training firm or communications related firm, but even when we speak to employers, I mean, let's say don't say business owners lah, huh? Even for employers, they really value soft skills because it's the hardest to teach. And I think a lot of business owners, when they go through the motions and they go through all these difficulties, you realize that it really separates the ones that do really, really well. I'm not even talking about myself, I'm talking about friends that I know. The ones that do really, really well have mastered the art of making good relationships, deepening those relationships, and creating partnerships where sometimes you think an opportunity does not exist, right? I've had situations in our firm where we will be talking to a client, we give them a quote, and they get really angry. They just, hey, it's really too expensive. And they get to a point where they're shouting over the phone, you know? And sometimes some of my team members have trouble dealing with these people. Like, I don't blame them. It's really, really tough. But I've had situations where I get on the phone, you know, I've used some of the things that we've learned over the years, and the client calms down and they in fact pay more than what we quoted them in the first place. And they pay with a smile because they have to do it or to get the outcome that they need. So I think you really need to have a mindset of, is this all that there is? Is there any way that I can be creative with a solution? Is there any way I can talk my way out of something if it really it causes me this amount of stress or
You do that
difficulty?
very well, clearly.
I don't know. We try our best, yeah. But it's something that I think is a very underrated skill, or at least you see most people that start businesses, and I've dealt with students. I used to teach in Nian. I used to mentor different startups and accelerators, and most of them have this ideal like, oh yeah, you know, I just need the tech guy. I need to build this product. I need to do all these things that I think would make a successful business. But the truth is, there's a reason why when VCs, who I have a lot of friends who work in VC, when they are investing in startup companies, they look at the founders, right? How formidable are they? Are they able to meander very difficult situations? Are they able to get themselves out of a sticky pickle without losing their cool? You know, can they recruit the right people? And you'll realize that all these things that they're looking for relates not to technical ability or being able to build an app, but more relates with you being able to create opportunities, being able to partner with people, being able to do more things in less time
Okay,
by
let me cut you for a
leveraging.
while.
Yeah, go for it.
Joseph asked, what are the challenges you had to scale your business? You had to face to scale your business from 6 to 7 figures, because he's
Sure.
there now. Just
Oh,
kidding.
okay,
I
can.
don't
No, no,
know.
no, sure, sure, sure. Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to interface this with you separately, Joseph. So I think first thing is on the front of, it depends what kind of business you have, right? Because the scaling challenge for different businesses just varies so much. I understand Joseph runs a SEO consultancy. So there's a part that is more operational and there's a part that is more human. Fortunately or unfortunately, the part that is more human is more difficult to scale, right? In that sense, the best kinds of businesses that scale a lot more quickly are the ones that sell products that does not require a very special type of input. Think of it as a machine, right? You put something in the machine, it generates something,
But isn't it
sort of an
also
output.
true that like it takes much longer to build a certain mass when it comes to like
Oh, yes, yes,
right
100%. Once
product
you get, especially for an agency style business, you'll get to a point where you see marginal returns, just how economics work, right? And there will be a point where you can't scale price. I mean, it's quite straightforward lah. The math and the levers that you can pull in an agency business, either you scale your price or you scale the amount of people that can deliver the amount of work. So in our case, we tried to find a sweet spot and we really scaled up the price. I mean, I'm not afraid to say on podcast because you can send it elsewhere and it's no problem. But let's say I'll give you an example. When Kaising and I first started the business, when we were very, very young, we were charging about what, $500 to $1,000 to do like a pitch deck, for example. And you know, at the time it was a lot of money to us, right? We were just 19-year-olds. You know, you can go and eat at the cafeteria for like 5 or 6 times a week. That'd be great. And now the rates have gone up to like $15,000 onwards. You know, so that's 300x price increase, and it has to happen because once you have the team strength and once you have a certain quality of output and a certain clientele, if you don't scale your price, and I know this is not the answer that most people want to hear if you're on this podcast, because it kind of goes without saying, the difficulty is not whether you need to scale your pricing, is how do you scale your pricing, right? And we could answer that if that's the question, but that's one of the ways that we definitely got to where we needed to be a lot quicker, because if you double your prices, you basically can serve half the client and fire half of them, in fact, and then you can get to the same point. With regards to how you scale the price, right? So one is, again, what the market will bear. versus what the alternatives are. I mean, I hate to say that it's apple and oranges, but sometimes it really is, right? To clients, they're not professional buyers. For them, they just Google and they find the first three, which is great for Google, for Joseph's businesses. They find the first three people, they compare the price, who is cheaper for the best value that they provide, boom, right? But how do we determine what the value is? How do we see and compare? That's very different for each client.
So
And that's something that
increasing prices is the reason that HighSpark grew from 6 figures to 7 figures.
that's one of the reasons. Like I said, that's more of a
Okay.
fundamental technical reason. It's sort of like 1+1 = 2 kind of thing.
Right.
Then 1+2 = 3. It's more of that kind of reason. But so that's one of the things that you need. I think the second thing that we had and that we continue to do, which you will hear from a lot of people who talk about scaling, is the processes, right? The processes are key, meaning you need SOPs, you need good people to run those SOPs, and you need tiers. The funny thing I think is when we first started the business, when you first start a small company, you're thinking, oh, you want a flat hierarchy, you want no one to report to anybody, and that works until you get about maybe 5 or 6 people. Then it stops working after that because you can't be one person or two people managing everybody and micromanaging. You can't scale past yourself. You basically created a job for yourself, right? If you want to scale past that and be able to have free time to do all the things that you want in life and the freedom that you want to unlock because you started the business in the first place, then you need qualified people who can manage other people. And the only way you can do that is one, to hire, two, to set processes in place so that you can, even you can't replace yourself 100%, you have a very good chance of getting to about 90 to 80, 90% efficiency. And that's going to be really bringing you half the way there, right? If
Do
you
you think
can't
there
do
is
that,
an
yeah,
obsession with scaling?
obsession with scaling.
Yeah.
Oh, 100%. I mean, again, I hate the comment because I have a lot of friends who are selling these kinds of programs, and I really, really like them and I respect them so much. I don't want to name names, but it really depends on your outcomes, right? We scale to what end, right? For example, let's say if I have a family and I want to spend time with my family, scale, 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 scale. It needs to scale to a point where I don't have to work, or I don't have to work all the time, because if not, I'm scaling to no end. I'm scaling for the sake of scaling, right? And there are companies that make millions of dollars in revenue. Events is a very good example. You can have an events company that makes maybe $2 million, $3 million in revenue, but their profits are marginal, so minuscule versus the revenue, right? Because their margins are so small. So there are certain businesses that scale, but they don't scale exponentially, and they see marginal returns over time. So you have to recognize, depending on the model of your business, that you will get there if it's a more manual kind of business like the one that I'm running. But if you're doing like technology, then of course the scale is infinite or infinite, right? It really depends on how and what is the outcome you want to get to. Because I'm assuming like these conversations are more for maybe small business owners, so along those lines, where you are trying to build freedom for yourself, and your family. So if you want to list your company on the NASDAQ in the future, power to you. That's great for you, but that's not my ambition. And you have to recognize that early on and don't get caught up. Because when you do, you're basically working towards someone else's vision, and that defeats the whole purpose of starting the business. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I think earlier you mentioned, right, like about, yeah, feel free to drink water, no worries. You've been seeing it for some time. So I think you mentioned earlier about nasty clients and kind of letting clients go, right? So what is your decision process, right? Or like what makes you decide when to quit, or like when to say like a partnership is not working out, or like a partner, a colleague, or a client?
Partner, colleague, or client. Okay, there's three different types. So the decision making is very different. I'll do the client one first, because I feel like for some reason people let go of colleagues a lot easier than they let go of the client, because the client pays them money, the colleagues eat money. They're sort of like a cash or cost center in that sense, right? For clients, it's tricky, but we have a decision making process for how we decide, right? When we take on a client, it's already important to decide how you're going to accept the client based on what decision making metric you may have. For me, I look at three factors. We can call it a trifecta if you like. I can't draw it on paper or anything right now. The first thing is whether it pays. So I mean, that's like baseline, right? If it doesn't pay, then I mean, that's one of the factors. The second
Yeah.
factor is whether you feel that this particular project is going to add value to the business in some way down the road. This could mean, for example, if you have the business working with you, and maybe they are good for portfolio piece that can open up new doors and new opportunities that you didn't have before in a whole nother industry. oh, then that's something that's a consideration. And of course, the last is whether you enjoy doing it, right? In the end, you run a business not just to make money, but to come to work excited, feeling like this is what you're meant to do. This is why you do why you wake up every day. So if it doesn't fulfill at least two of these things on the of the three things that I mentioned, we usually don't accept the client. And that's already going to save you the pain of firing the client because you don't accept the wrong ones, right? So let's say if you really accepted the wrong one,
So you
so
mentioned three things, right?
yes, go
Price,
for it.
portfolio, and then whether you enjoy it, the work.
Call it passion, and then you got three P's
Passion,
already.
passion, three
Congrats,
P's.
congrats.
Okay.
Yeah. So I use that as our internal decision making metric to decide whether we take in the client. I think we're very lucky to be in a position where we can say yes and no to clients, because most people just take cause no choice, lah, right? So let's say you already accepted somebody, sadly, right? You already accepted somebody and you don't really like them anymore, and they don't really like you anymore. You're finding this really a tough situation, or maybe they like you but you don't like them. Then it becomes more difficult to separate. It's sort of like a toxic relationship, right? They keep abusing you, but yeah, you're quite nice, and you cannot let them stick around. So in those instances, uh, one is you have to be very clear on what the reason is, and also what's the official and unofficial reason, right? In my case, I usually draw the line that if the client is very rude to my team members, in a way that is unforgivable, or they really have a good reason and they're doing all that, and not like they had a mental breakdown or something, then I don't think that it's logical for us to continue that relationship. I wouldn't feel comfortable, and yes, maybe they may be a big account, but we have to draw the line somewhere, right? If they are a big account, I know that for some people they'll be I can't let go, they're paying us so well. Totally understand. So my view is, if you can't let go of them immediately, work towards replacing them or keeping your
Right.
pipelines full. So the focus areas of the business, because there are so many, it can be very tough. Then you feel like if you let go of this client, it causes like it cascades and gives you like 20 other problems. It's true. So my view is, you have to realize that the business is a machine, and there are different levels you can pull. If you can keep your pipeline full, technically you have all the leverage to say yes and no and hire clients. So that's something that you have to do for yourself as soon
Mm-hmm.
as you can. It's something that we will avoid if we don't have a sales experience and we're very uncomfortable with that. Because most of us, when we first start out the business, if it's more of like a solopreneur business, a small enterprise and things like that,
Yeah.
we can do the work really well, right? But we can't sell, or we don't have a sales process. And that's
Mm-hmm.
going to bite us in the backside down the road, because we don't have that leverage to say no to the client. So I think put yourself in a position of power in that sense, so that you can say no, but say no in a nice way. Then the third part is, how do you say no, right? We can talk all day about that, unfortunately, but I don't know if we have enough time for this particular session, but I'll give you some notes. So the first thing is, you need to start the conversation, right? And you don't want to immediately say you don't want to work with them anymore. Usually you're in the process of doing something. So in the process of that, you need to give them feedback. So regularly, I recommend doing it on calls. Some people are scared and they send an email and all that. That's the worst, because the way that you read an email versus the way they read an email is very different. And to be frank with you, most people are very lousy at writing emails. So I think, make the call, talk to them, share with them that you're feeling a certain way, which again doesn't put the blame on them, because you're feeling it in some way, and that you of course hope there's an improvement lah. But you can share with them that you're also put in a difficult position, and you need to make the right decision towards respecting them and being responsible to them, while also being responsible to your team, and ensuring that you can do the best work that you can. So I think you come from that perspective, you're distancing them from taking it personally, because when you say, hey, it's your fault, oh, people hate that, so you gotta talk about the problem as a separate thing, and then share with them that we want to work on making this problem better. If we find that we cannot make this problem better for the both of us, it likely would be not a bad idea to go our separate ways in that sense, and we can recommend somebody else. Sometimes people don't receive that so well, again depending how you do it, but you just have to be ready for whatever instance. Sort of like firing at staff, it's not a great thing, but sometimes it has to be done also.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Okay. The next question is, what would you have done differently throughout these 7 years?
Oh,
So I mean chronologically you started HighSpark, right? And then eventually you moved into starting Motion Source as well. So and I believe that you tried different things along the way. So what would you have done differently? Would you have
okay.
would you have like worked corporate actually if you think back?
Oh,
Like a corporate job,
I did think about this very recently.
because you never had a job before, right?
Yeah, I haven't. Like honestly, straight out of school, we started this and we didn't really understand anything. To be frank, I used to think that I would regret it. To be honest, I used to think, yeah, maybe I should have just gone to work first. But now I look back and I think, no, no regrets. Reason being because through the process of this, the learning curve was exponential at the beginning. The second thing was we had the opportunity to meet so many people that we would have never had the opportunity to meet unless we were I mean, even yourself, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to meet you
Yeah.
if we didn't do this in the first place, right? So
Yeah.
those things are way, way, way more valuable than what I feel at the time when I was so young, corporate experience could have given me. Plus,
Right.
I feel that if I had gone through that path, it would have limited my beliefs of what the world was like, what I could ask for, what I could do. And with HighSpark and starting the business, I think it just left me with a limitless mindset or potential of things that we could do, and also kind of like learning the things that we've learned along the way. With regards to that, I feel like I would have never, if I went down that path, I wouldn't have stepped out of it to do a business, which would have made me
Mm,
regret it 100%. So I think I don't
right.
regret it at all, and I feel like it's something that if you can do young, when you're younger, I mean, people are more willing to help you. You have such low risk, and most you feel go back and study, like it doesn't really change anything. And I encourage it. I heavily encourage it to all my students in
If
school.
you were employed, right? If you imagine yourself employed right now, what job would you think you would do?
I think I don't have to imagine. So I mean, I haven't publicly talked about this, but I will be joining another firm. So I'll be sort of like doing more of an advisory thing at HighSpark and Motion Source, and I'll be joining another firm. It's called Salad. I won't want to talk too much about it over this call, but it is in the blockchain space. So it actually was something that I was looking into. Again, I'm interested in blockchain. I'm interested in VCs because in our work we meet a lot of these startup companies that are so great and so clever, and honestly they are just not sleeping every other day because they're working so hard on their companies, which I admire. But to what end? Behind the scenes they are raising money from VCs that have multi-million dollar, billion-dollar funds that just
Mm,
inject this money into them and they just wait to see what happens. And they're not putting skin in the game. They work and they pressure startup companies to raise a new round or to grow at an exponential pace so that they can make their money back. And it's very terrible. In this case, I feel, to be the startup founder because you really lose out. So I mean, I feel like the being a VC is a very big responsibility, or
right.
being an investor in that sense. So I've always been interested in being in that position, so you can really help people, right? You can really
Right.
provide the fuel, the advisory, and be able to walk that distance with them. So I think that's another area I'm interested in. So if I wasn't in HighSpark or Motion Source at the get-go, I would have seen myself in that area. Also probably in like education. I've always wanted to teach. So I had a taste of that when I was teaching in Neon for a bit. And now, yeah, I'm moving on to a new role where I'll be able to do those things.
Okay, Bob says hello. Hi, Bob.
Oh, hi, Bob. Question mark.
Hi, Bob.
Oh, great, great,
Okay.
great.
Yeah. So going back to the question, right? We didn't really answer. You didn't really answer it, lah. What would you have done differently?
Oh, what I've done differently when I was
Mm,
younger until now, right?
yeah, in
So the,
general.
the thing that I would have done differently is 100%, and I've shared this very openly with people. I would have invested more money in coaches, in teachers, in consultants, in people who knew more things than me and have been through the motions, because I could have accelerated my learning. I've always been brought up to save money. I don't spend money on food, like on transport and things like that. Of course, I started to now, but previously I did not. And I would only buy like books from Amazon, from different places, and from the bookstore, and just read them and learn it all on my own. And it's great. I learned a lot of things, but you will get to a point where the knowledge is there, but the interpretation of the knowledge is limited to what you know and what you've been through. Somebody else who has been through these things will look at the same piece of information and see a completely different story. And that perspective and that view and that wisdom can change everything for you, right? It can help you basically make the right decisions in your business. It can fast track everything that we did in 7 years could have been compressed into 2 or 3 years. To be very frank with you, right? So I really regret not investing in uh expert help earlier, and
Mm-hmm.
that's one of the main things I would have changed, and it would have really changed our trajectory like crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Second thing I regret is, I guess, not learning a more technical skill also. I always wanted to learn, like, um I've always been very amazed, and I admire people who can code, who can do
Right.
all these technology related things. I never understood how they were able to do that, and I always, it's like magic to me, to be honest. And
Right.
I think I have the right mindset for it, but I've just not been able to pick it up. So that's one of my regrets also.
To learn to code, is it?
Yeah,
That's
I
not
mean, to
easy.
learn a technical skill in that sense, yes.
Right, right, right. I mean, you can do it now. Never too late.
Yeah, I could. I'll
Like
probably make
more ready.
excuses along the way, but I felt like if I learned it when I was younger, it would have shaped me a bit differently lah.
So if you could like turn back, you would like spend more money on like coaches,
I
to
would like,
check
yeah,
your learning, and then
correct. Oh, last
you
thing, I would have invested more. I think it's a nice muscle to build. An investing muscle. You understand, you read about different companies, you learn about the markets. It makes you a better business owner because you know how listed companies and the best companies in the world run their companies, and you can learn from them by that exposure also. Yes, so that's the third thing.
Okay, okay. Down to like last two questions. Oh, Your Wei says nice advice on spending money on experts to guide us on how to make the right decisions. Because we have mostly been taught since young to save money, but know where to spend your money on. Yeah.
Ah,
Who are the types of people or industries that you are looking to work with for the next step?
what next step, you way? I'm
Maybe
confused.
like who are you looking to connect with? I guess that's what he's
What
asking.
type of people in the yeah, I think like I said, there are many different people you can connect to, and you'll realize that even the people that we want to network with and we want to work with are in positions where they make things happen without having to build the thing, right? We can talk about ideas, we can talk about possibilities. I'd love to get connected to more leaders in marketing. I'd love to get connected to more community owners, probably more people who are thinkers, right? People who like basically sit down and think about ideas of how the world would be very differently. Even consultants, even people who are building applications or already built them and tried them, right? So I think those those kinds of people already have a lot of synergy with what we're doing or what we continue to do. uh, but like I said, I think we can make a lot of good things happen together in that sense. I'd also love to get connected to like investors, VCs who are looking into this new space that I'm joining, which is in the blockchain space, because it's really exciting, and I think definitely there's a lot of value that has yet to be unlocked there.
Yeah, Bob says yes, spend money on coaches.
Oh, Bob, you're great.
Okay. Yeah, so I think then the next almost the last two questions, right? Like what are your plans for yourself in the future? Because I think you mentioned like there's a little bit of a transition. You are like at a new company and stuff. But maybe overall goals for the future?
Sure. So I've never seen the business as a separate thing from my life, right? I think a lot of us, if you say you start a business yourself, it suddenly becomes your life all of a sudden, right? Which
Yeah.
is great, but also bittersweet when you get to a point where you realize you don't have a life anymore. Like you can't separate and you can't compartmentalize, right? I still don't want to see it that way, that it's separate. I think a career is something that's very important to people, and it's kind of intertwined in the way that you live your life and the people that you meet in your circle of friends. So my view for myself, or at least my goals in the future, is I hope to be able to eke out more time to build something together with a smart group of people, which I believe are going to be the group of people that are going to that in the organization that I'm joining. At the same time, I really love to, uh, start a family. Look into the personal areas of my life, because I think COVID has made me realize that life's really short, and you never know when all these things will happen. Work is great, and to build all these things is great, and I'm sure most people come to watch this to find these nuggets to kind of boost their career and all that, and that's great. But you want to always bring it back to your goals. I feel like having clarity on your goals and what you want to achieve for yourself on many different areas and facets of your life is going to be even more powerful than any business tip that I could give you or anyone else could. Because once you get that alignment, no matter what you do, as long as you hit your bottom line baseline, you basically won. It's not a competition and it's not a race, right? It might be a contrarian view, because most people are like, oh yeah, you gotta scale, you gotta make as much money as you can, and save it and buy a Lamborghini and all that. That's not something that's for me, and I don't think it's for everyone also.
So like to be a bit more introspective, that's your goal, like to start a family.
Yeah, I
being.
think introspective is one. I like it. I think I want to challenge myself more, and sometimes you need to understand. I mean, I hate to say this, but sometimes you need to understand that running your business is gonna stretch you like crazy. It may get to a point after many years that you find that you're not being stretched much anymore. So it's either you need to start something new in your business, or it may just be time to find something that's going to stimulate you in that way and push you to
Mhm.
be even better than you were.
Mm.
Yeah, and I think that's what I found for myself. And my business partners are super supportive, and I'm really happy about that. Yeah, but I feel like whoever else is looking into something like that, or they're unsure, or maybe they're running a business and feeling so tired, I would say keep going, but at the same time, be very realistic with what you need and what you want.
Mm. Right, right. Okay, so I think I have a last question and then we can end this session. But anybody, if you have any other questions, to the people who are watching, I think there's a couple who are watching, right? Like if you're watching, just comment down your questions. Yeah, the button popped out, and then we will answer them. If not, we'll end the session very soon. So you mentioned that you are after a certain number of years, maybe you're not challenged anymore because you've been running the business for some time. Is that what led to you exploring a new role in a company?
Yes. Again, it's of no fault of my team members and my business partner because they're amazing. And a lot of people ask me, they're like, is it the business not doing well? I tell you, my mom was so worried. She's like, oh no, is it something wrong? The truth is there was nothing wrong with it. It was
Right.
great. And I think that was the problem, right? We were very comfortable and we still are. And we've gotten to a point where we have some really good clients on retainer, and they like us and we like them, and we're doing all of that. But I felt like there were a lot more skill sets that I wanted to explore that kind of fell outside of what I was doing. So it's nothing to do with the company that it wasn't working well, it wasn't stretching me enough, like at a certain point, or to an extent. But I think past that, I knew that because in the business, I think you have to keep yourself motivated. There's nobody else to push you unless you have a business partner, which also pushes you, lah, right? But I think I wanted to try something new, and again in a new space,
You
which I
wanted a new
knew that
challenge.
yeah, I did want a new challenge. I was getting a bit bored, to be frank, right? So there's something else that would challenge me, and I would have no choice but to do it because I'm not the boss anymore in some way, and I'm
Yeah.
working towards building this thing together with other people that I've never met in my life, and it's exciting, lah. It's exciting to
Right.
me.
And like what about it? What of this challenge like kind of got you interested? Like what
Um,
exactly do you want to be challenged in? Since
sure.
yeah.
Okay, feels like an interview, like a interrogation, but okay, no issues. What do I want to be challenged in? Definitely, I think trying new things in terms of the skill sets that I haven't yet built. For example, I mean, in our business, we have to do everything, right? So I've done like HR, sales, and all that. But I think I haven't done it at a different scale. That's one. Okay, because the business, we've decided to keep it at a certain scale. So maybe at a bigger scale, there's not. I think being part of building something that is at a bigger scale also, like a bigger tech product, something like that. At the same time, maybe even in dabbling a bit in investing, like in VC, analyzing companies, coming up with reports, things like that that I've never had a chance to do. We've
Right.
helped develop stories for startups to raise millions of dollars. We've helped companies close like multi-million dollar sales pitches, but haven't been on the side of the person that does that. The
Mm.
receiving end. Haven't been on the side of the person who gets to invest or decide which one is a good story that you invest in. Would love to kind of turn the tables on that, and be in that position, uh
Mm.
to help in that sense. Yeah.
Mm. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I think that's all the questions that I want to ask.
All right.
Thanks, Eugene, for being part of this. So, yeah, like I mentioned, right, this is the first interview as part of this startup conversation series that I am starting. I'm not sure how long or how many of these that I'll do. But if you like it, do watch it and then like let me know. And yeah, we'll continue some of these things as well. Eugene, do you have anything else to say? I think Joseph said thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you, Joseph. No lah, I think I like I said, this is the first for Crystal, and I'm really happy that she gave me this opportunity to share. She knows I love to talk, and this is one of the best platforms to do that. Yeah, I think what she has here is great as a platform. And if I mean, not only like watch it, but if you feel that you have a good story that you can share, because running a business can be really lonely, And sometimes it's just nice to know that someone's going through the same things that you are. So yeah, don't be afraid if you're going through some difficulty and you've had some experience under your belt. I think just contact Crystal. So yeah, and thanks for having me on board.
Thank you. Okay, so I'll end the broadcast already. Bye
Alrighty.
bye, everybody.